When was the last time that you were truly amazed by a place? I'll go first. Vancouver Island. In our time on the road so far, we've met more overlanders hailing from this one island than any single state in the US. Whether it's something in the water, or the air, or the trees, or the sand, there's something about this place that inspires travel. But when meeting all these folks on the road, listening to them wax poetic about their homeland, we did have to wonder, if it's so great, why do so many of you choose to leave? Even with our doubts, we added Vancouver Island to our list of places to travel. A list that somehow only gets longer as we see more places. As we developed our plans to spend the summer in Alaska, we realized that the island, as the locals call it, was just a small detour out of our route north. So we decided to book a ferry and check it out for ourselves. What we would find would blow our minds. In fact, when it was time for us to leave, we were still left with the same basic question, yet in a different form. Why would anyone want to leave? After returning from our winter in Baja, we spent the spring bouncing around the western United States to see friends and family. After driving north through Washington, we arrived in Port Angeles and got in line for a ferry. We waited with the other passengers for the ferry to arrive. While it seemed like just another day for many of them, the anticipation of what was to come brought butterflies to our chests. The ferry arrived and its mainland-bound passengers unloaded, and then it was our turn to drive our house onto the boat. It was the first time we had loaded our vehicle onto a boat, and it was our first time overlanding in Canada. And more importantly, it was the start of a trip that we had been dreaming of for years. A summer in the northern latitudes. We had so much to anticipate. The mountains, the sea, the animals, and the endless daylight. We were riding on a cloud. And the soft serve ice cream on board was icing on the cake. Soon we were approaching Victoria, the capital of British Columbia. The ferry ride was smooth, and we even saw some whales spouting in the distance to welcome us. Like the loading process, unloading was surprisingly efficient. We drove off the boat, crossed through customs, and were transplanted into the middle of a bustling city. Victoria is a gorgeous city with a surprising amount of culture and a ton of history. After driving around for way too long looking for a space to park our giant house among the compact cars and motorcycles of the city, we got out and walked around. We grabbed a quick dinner and then made our way out of the city to camp. We camped in a boring parking lot on the side of the road, simply needing a place to sleep. But in the morning, some nice women told us that we were super close to the world's highest railroad trestle, so we jogged out to see it. We're suckers for the world's most anything. World's biggest truck stop? Been there. World's biggest burl? We'd see that on Vancouver Island as well. We might also be interested in the world's longest road. But you'll need to subscribe to learn more about those ambitions. The trestle was a cool stop and a good intro to the diversity of the island. We kept moving and checked out Nanaimo, which is the other major city on the island. We often find ourselves walking along the docks and harbors. Maybe it's because both of us grew up around water and boats, or maybe it's the mixture of salt fish and diesel fumes that keep us coming back. Or perhaps we visit to see a glimpse of non-traditional lives people live in cities. But who are we kidding? We didn't come to Vancouver Island to see the cities, as vibrant as they may be. We came here for the backroads and the trees and the water, so we continued north into the lesser inhabited areas. Vancouver Island is 3 times the size of Hawaii, but only has 800,000 people, half of which live in Nanaimo or Victoria. This leaves a lot of room for the dirt roads and backwoods camping that we came here for. Each campsite we found was somehow better than the last. Some were tucked in large forests, some were right along rivers or the ocean. They were all stunning and clean and welcoming. One of our favorite oceanside campsites was simply begging us to get out on the water. We pumped up our new pack rafts and enjoyed a perfect wind-free evening on the Inside Passage. The sun was setting past 9 p.m. at this point, and we used every minute of daylight available as we cruised on the glassy sea. Getting out on the water always provides a new perspective. We often find ourselves moving nearly every day when we're in a new place, but this site was too cool to stay for just one night. On our second evening, we walked around on the Forest Service Road and picked a boatload of salmon berries. What have you got there, honey?
Salmon berries.
As we ate the berries, we watched as big boats came through the passage. We even saw this boat moving timber. When we planned this leg of the trip, we were anxious to get up to Alaska for the short summer season, so we only budgeted 5 days on the island. But at this point, 4 days in, we just couldn't bear the thought of leaving so soon. This place was magical, and we wanted to steep in it for as long as we could. People often ask us what our favorite part of living on the road is. One of my absolute favorite things is that we get to be truly spontaneous. Like, call the ferry company or stay in another week spontaneous. We changed our return ferry and made plans to check out a few more places that we originally didn't think we'd get to see. And we slowed our trip down around this island. We stayed 2 nights instead of 1 at a bunch of spots. One of the places that we had originally not budgeted time to see was the western side of the island. This is where the land meets the colossal force that is the Pacific Ocean and gets hammered by giant storms. We first checked out Ucluelet, or Yuki as the locals call it. We fell in love with this cute seaside town. The locals were super friendly to us, and we even met some folks who invited us to stay on their property, which we did because finding free camping here can be a challenge. We walked around a park located on the ocean side. The trees in this area were really neat, with crazy root structures coming out of the ground. Believe it or not, this is prime seawolf territory, so we were on the lookout, but alas, we didn't get to see any. The vibrant greens right alongside the salty ocean was something we hadn't seen in a while. It's clear that this place gets a ton of rain, and we were thankful that we had timed our visit for a few days of sun. But the sun wouldn't last, and the next day was misty and gray. And even with our spontaneous time extension, our ferry to the mainland was soon approaching. We checked out the well-known surf town of Tofino in the rain. The surfers clearly didn't mind getting a little wet, and were having a blast hitting the waves that make this spot famous. We soon needed to get some exercise ourselves to warm up, so we checked out a hike that local resident recommended to us, and it was unlike any other hike we'd done before. It started in the soupy mist of the rainforest, among old-growth trees, salmonberries, and lush moss. We climbed a few steep pitches, and soon we were in an apocalyptic scene. It was an old abandoned building, seemingly in the middle of the woods. We continued on, walking across planks laid to keep hikers from sinking into the boggy ground. The trail pitched upwards again, and we were suddenly faced with something even more apocalyptic. A large plane crash that was surprisingly well preserved. This plane crashed because of an engine failure shortly after takeoff in 1945. Amazingly, all of the crew survived thanks to some incredible flying by the pilot. We lingered around this eerie scene, taking pictures, trying to put ourselves in the shoes of the men who somehow walked away from this site. Thankfully, we had a warm truck waiting for us as we walked away. And as quickly as our first departure date snuck up on us, so did the second departure date. But this time, we had to stick to it if we wanted to catch the midnight sun up in Alaska. So we headed to the port and boarded the ferry back to the mainland. One of the many things we've learned in the months we've been on the road has been that our expectations going into a new place really dictate the experience. If we go in with low expectations and the place turns out okay, we're happy. But if we go into a place with sky-high expectations, building a place up to something it can never reach, we'll be disappointed. So we do our best to temper our expectations so that we don't set ourselves up for disappointment. But sometimes we just can't help but have high expectations. When everyone we meet tells us we'll be blown away, how do we temper that? Looking back, we had set ourselves up to be disappointed by this place. Yet somehow, despite letting these expectations grow larger than they should have been, we weren't disappointed. In fact, we were still amazed. We saw things that we had no idea existed. We marveled at the landscape this place has to offer. We feasted on local cuisine and interacted with folks who live on the island. We really got a taste for this place. If you have a chance to visit, make sure you give it some time and allow yourself to be surprised. There's a lot to see. If you enjoyed this video, you're in for a treat. We're making more. We were just getting started on our northward journey, and there is a whole lot more adventure coming your way. Make sure to subscribe to be the first to know about it. Thanks for watching.